Well, we are wrapping up a series today, a series of messages we've been looking at. In some ways, it's a series from this year, just 2026. In some ways, it goes all the way back to the beginning of the fall, because we were looking at the book of Revelation, and that is all from the Apostle John, just like these letters we've been in this year so far. And so we're going to move into a different section of the Bible after this week. So today, I'm very excited about today's message. I hope that you are with me in it. And what I want to try to do, we're going to look at the third letter of John. It is very short. What we're going to do is connect all three letters of John, show how they go together, and then draw out one simple point, which is the main point of 3 John. And I think this is going to help the letters come from maybe way up here and bring them down here to our actual lives. So follow along with me today, and hopefully this will really be useful. This is the kind of letter that when you just read it once by yourself at home, you might think, not really sure what to do with that letter. I'm not sure what that has to do with my life. But as you dig into it, it will open itself to you. So hopefully that's what happens today. Lord, help us in that. Let's start off with an illustration. This will help us get at our main point. So in life, there is a tension between two things. In any activity that you are engaged in, there is a tension between learning the instructions and example and experience. So the trick question is, which one's more important? Is it more important that you go to university first and learn all the instructions, or is it more important that you just start working in the field first and get the experience? And of course, the answer is, I already told you, it's a trick question, right? These are both indispensable. They are both absolutely indispensable. And in many ways, they have to go together. I think many people have recognized that's one of the problems with our current education system that some people are trying to fix, is that sometimes you're learning the instructions without any experience for a very long time. And that doesn't work well. But if you just do experience and example, you're missing a piece. You need to do them both together. Some of our trades training actually has become more like that, right? You do instruction, and then you do real-world experience, and you go back and forth. So this is a very important dynamic. If you just learn the instructions, you are lacking something essential, and same the other way. Let's take an example, and I'm going to use cooking as the example because it's something most of us can relate to in some way, whether you're good at cooking or whether you're not, but you could use any area of knowledge, any skill that you might be learning as an example. So let's take, in cooking, right, you have a recipe, right? There's going to be a recipe. Now, that's the instructions, okay? How important is the recipe? That's another trick question. Some of you are going to say, well, it's super important. You got to follow the recipe exactly or your cooking is ruined. Some of you are going to say, I never follow a recipe. The truth is you probably do in some ways. You at least have some sort of guideline that could be written out. The recipe, I would say, is very important. I cook a lot. I love to cook. I have since I was a kid. And often I think, I'm one of those people that thinks, I don't need the recipe, right? I don't need the recipe. I can just throw this stuff together. And if I'm going quickly, that's what I'll do. And sometimes I will forget. What I really need is at least the basic outline, even at this stage. Because I will forget something really important, or kind of the exact ratio of a couple of things. And then, I'll have my kids cook the same thing, and it'll be better than when I make it, even though I have many years more experience, because they followed the recipe. Okay. The recipe, if you're thinking about where this is going, the recipe is like the Bible, right? It's the instructions. It's the instructions. But how important is the example and experience? Super important. If you've never cooked before, I chose this image just off of stock images. But I chose this one because it looks like this guy has never cracked an egg before, right? It looks like she's teaching him how to crack an egg. She's kind of observing, and he's like, whoa, this is how you do it? Okay, so you could even think of that as a particular example. Cracking an egg is something that could be listed in the instructions, but there is so much that goes along with that. If you've never cracked an egg before, I've taught many people how to cook over the years. My kids, others, homestay students. If you've never cracked an egg before and somebody just says, crack an egg, what's going to happen is you stare looking at this egg and I know the idea of what to do. I've got to hit it against something, but I'm a little scared because it might go all over the place. I don't know how hard to hit it. I don't know the exact motions. You need an example first. You need to see someone crack an egg. In fact, have you ever seen those people who can crack 2 eggs at the same time, one with each hand? Well, I've only seen them in the movies, and I've never been able to replicate it. If you're one of those people, I need a real-life example, because every time I try to do it, it just makes a mess. I would love to be able to crack 2 eggs at the same time, one with each hand. So if you know anybody like that, so sometimes you cannot achieve the goal without the example in front of you. And then you need experience. You need to try it. Even after you've watched the person crack an egg, you need to do it a number of times before you get the feel and the rhythm. You guys know this experience. You know this experience from life. This is what the Apostle John is going to be getting at when it comes to the example of following Jesus, when it comes to how to actually walk in the light, in the truth. He's going to use that idea that we need both the instructions and a strong example in our lives of someone to follow. That's going to come across clearly in this letter. But first, let's do a couple of things. Let's remind ourselves of where we're at here, because this is the last time you'll see these points. This whole section, these letters, John has just returned from exile on the island of Patmos. He is, in a sense, walking in light. He is a different person even than before he went and had the revelation. That was a life-changing experience for him. They call him the elder. You're going to see that again in this letter. He just opens it from the elder. Everyone knows who the elder is. It is the Apostle John. He's around the age of 90 at this point. We don't know exactly how old. He could be even much older than that. Some people think maybe he wrote this letter closer to the age of 100. But he's at least around the age of 90. His major themes, God is light, God is love, walk in light, love, and truth. And so what this last letter is going to do for us today, it's going to bring all these letters together and give us tangible ways to understand this and live this out in our lives. Because sometimes it's hard to take these ideas. Okay, what does it mean to walk in love? Okay, yeah, I want to do that. But now, what does that mean right here on Monday morning or Thursday afternoon in my actual life? That's the gap that we need to bridge. There's a lot about false teachers and antichrists in this letter, and there's going to be again. And there's a lot about keeping Christ's commands. So for John, what it means to walk in truth, we've been over this a few times, but it's important to come away with this idea. Walking in truth means you are actually trying to follow Jesus' teaching. That's what it means. It doesn't mean you just say the right things on Sunday or you have the right theology. It means you are trying to be, for example, a humble person in your life. You are trying to take the last place, not the first place. You are trying to lay down your life for other people, to serve other people. You are trying to love other people in genuine ways. So all of the teachings of Jesus, which there are many, but they all kind of have the same direction, right? Love God and love other people. And so you're actually trying to live that out. That's super important, keeping Christ's commands. All right. So we'll start off looking at the text. Oh, and the message today is called Good Christian, Bad Christian. All right? And that is what John does in this letter. It's amazing. Good Christian, Bad Christian. So I'm going to start off just reading the letter because it's very short. And then we will dive into sort of a summary of all 3 letters so that we can see how they go together And I think you'll see some connections here that are quite amazing. So here's the letter. From the elder to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth. This letter is different because he actually names people in this letter, unlike the other letters. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health, that it's going to go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Dear friend, you are faithful in what you're doing for the brothers and sisters, even though they're strangers to you. They've told the whole church about your love. Please send them on their way in a manner that honors God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. Who he's talking about here, we'll get to it. We ought, therefore, to show hospitality to such people so that we may work together for the truth. I wrote to the church. Notice this. He says he's already written to this church. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, he will not welcome us. So when I come, I'm going to call attention to what he's doing. He's spreading malicious nonsense about us. And he's not even satisfied with that. He even refuses to welcome other believers. He also stops those who want to welcome others, and he puts them out of the church. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. This verse is the center of the whole letter. Dear friends, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. Demetrius, on the other hand, is well spoken of by everyone, and even by the truth itself. So we also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. I have much to write you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. Were you here last week? This is the same thing he says. I have a ton of stuff to write to you, to tell you, but I don't want to write it with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here, all of your brothers and sisters, your loved ones, send greetings. Greet the friends there by name. That's it. That's the whole letter of 3 John. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a snapshot. We spent a long time in the first letter of John. We spent last week in his second letter, which is also short. But the thing is, these 3 letters are linked. So I'm going to show you what's happening in 1 John, and then show you how it links to 2 John and to 3 John. Because you have to understand the situation going on in the church to understand what John is really saying in this letter, at least some parts of it. I think this will be helpful. I think it will make it come alive. So here we go. So the whole first letter of John is basically this, okay? John has returned from Patmos, and remember in the book of Revelation, he writes to all these churches, right? To 7 churches in the region of what is today Western Turkey, okay? So John is still in that area. And there's another really important city in that area that's not mentioned in Revelation, but it's a city that if you study the Bible, you are familiar with. That's the city of Ephesus. Okay? So John has been spending a long time now, after the book of Revelation, he's been spending it in Ephesus. But what he's doing is he's running a mission team. He's got a whole bunch of missionaries who, I don't know, you could kind of say they work for him. They don't exactly work for him. It wasn't structured that way, but they're like his disciples. They're his team. And he's sending them out to all of these churches in the region, strengthening the churches, helping them do evangelism. He's like the regional minister of the area. That's what he's doing in his last years. And he's training other pastors. He's training young men. We've talked about that. And so the whole letter of 1 John is basically this. John writes a letter to all the churches in the region. Here's a letter to encourage everybody. I'm writing this letter to remind everybody what's true, help everybody keep on track, and warn them about a few things that, might happen in their churches, okay? And so here's what he says in that letter. I'm just going to summarize it just very briefly. He starts off in that first letter and says, "We saw and we touched Jesus." We're not making it up. We really were there with him. It's a long time ago now. It's like, 70 years ago. We saw him face to face. Believe it. And then he says to them, it's very important that you don't pretend to be sinless. Okay? God's going to forgive you if you sin, so just admit your sins to him, and he's going to forgive you. But you should also continually test yourselves. Real faith equals belief, obedience, and love. Real faith is not just saying you believe something. It's believing it, and then it's trying to do it, and it's doing it with the right spirit, a spirit of love. And also, all of you churches in this area, he's saying, watch out, because there's a whole bunch of antichrists who are coming. And they're going to try to lead you the wrong way. Okay? It's a very strong term. We've talked about that. But what he's talking about here are Christians, people who claim to be Christians, who are part of the churches, but are either going off the wrong way in what they teach or in how they live. Okay? They're not doing all three of these things. They're doing maybe one or two. And he says these people, they deny Christ in the flesh. Okay? And what he means by that is false teaching, but also denying Christ by the way they live. Okay? So you could deny Christ by the way you live in a couple of ways, and we talked about this last week. It could be really blatant sin, right? Like denying Christ could be, I go sleep around with prostitutes. That is denying Christ in the flesh, to John, in his language. But also, denying Christ could be, I'm just really self-centered and I'm all about me. And that's a little harder to identify sometimes. Okay? I'm arrogant, and in my work in the church, I just point to myself all the time, and I try to be the great leader and control everybody. Okay? And that's what we're going to get to in 3 John, in this letter we're on to today. And then he finishes up this first letter by saying, you can know that you have eternal life. That's something you can actually know. You can know it by obeying the truth and seeing the fruit that's born out in your life. Okay, so next we move into the second letter of John. So he wrote this first letter. It's to all these churches. It's encouraging. He's going to encourage all these churches. The second letter, I am now convinced. I wasn't actually fully convinced of this last week, but I'm now fully convinced. It is written to one church in particular. It was not originally intended. It went to all the churches because they got so much out of it that this church sent it to everybody else too. But it was written to one church in particular. We don't know which one. Probably one of those churches listed in Revelation, right? Thyatira, Smyrna, Pergamum, Laodicea, one of those congregations. It's written to the same church as 3 John. So these 2 letters are to the same church. Okay? And here's his point in this second letter. He's saying, let me follow up with your church in particular. Because I've heard about some antichrists specifically in your church. And so let me clarify what I was saying and what you need to do. Okay? And so we went over this last week, but I'm going to put it a little bit different way today. What he says to them is this. He says, there are 2 things. If people do either one of these 2 things, then you've got to react in a certain way. Number 1, if anyone teaches that Jesus is not the Christ, or that he didn't come in the flesh, if they do that, that's really bad, okay? They're an antichrist. But also, and we've already said this, he already said this in 1 John, he's just clarifying it again here. If someone goes off their own way and does not live the way Jesus taught, they're an antichrist. And you should not support them. That's what he says. So if either of these two things are true of somebody, then don't support them. In fact, stay away from them. Even if they're part of the church. That's what John is telling this particular church in 2 John. Crazy. And he also says, I will be there soon. So I think he hears about what's going on in this church. He hears that there's maybe a really kind of arrogant leader in this church in some way, or somebody who's trying to become a leader, and he's concerned about this. So he warns the church about this. Okay, this guy might be saying the right things, but be careful. Look at his life. Is he a good example? Is he living the way Jesus taught us to live? Is he humble? Is he loving? Okay, and if he's not, just get away from him. You don't have to try to kick him out. Just don't support what he's doing. And he says, and I'm coming. So I'm going to come in person to help you guys out because I see there's something going on here. Okay? So that's 2 John. Now, enter 3 John. Okay? So here I'm going to summarize it, but I'm also going to bring in the actual text in between so we can see it. Okay? So 3 John is basically this. His last letter made this guy named Diotrephes really mad. And now Diotrephes is trying to kick John's friends out of the church. This church is now in full crisis mode. And so he is writing to Gaius to tell Gaius what he should do in this situation. So you've got a full-on church crisis that was it's kind of started by Diotrephes, but it was kind of started by the Apostle John. He wrote the letter to them at first, hearing that some stuff was going on, and you got to just don't have anything to do with this guy. Be careful. Now, there's several things here. First of all, how bold is Diotrephes, right? He is resisting. You're going to see in this letter, he is trying to kick people out of the church who want to help the Apostle John do ministry. You're going to stand. I can't even imagine. You're going to try and kick out. This is the guy who was with Jesus at the Last Supper. All right? This is the guy who saw the revelation and the Roman emperors have been trying to kill him for 60 years and no one can kill him. And Diotrephes is so bold that he's going to try to resist and kick out the Apostle John and his whole team from leadership in this church. So another thing you can gather from this is that churches always go through leadership crisis at different points. Always. Even the Apostle John's churches went through leadership crisis. That's crazy to think about. All right, but you're going to see how John responds to this. Okay, so who is Gaius? We don't know. The letter doesn't say who Gaius is. All of the names in this letter actually are totally unknown except for this letter. Okay, so Diotrephes, we don't know anything about him. Demetrius is noted. We don't know anything about him. Gaius is one of the most common names in the Roman Empire. So it's like saying John, right? So, we don't know anything about him. But we can guess a few things from the letter. Gaius is probably one of the elders of the church. Okay? So here's something and you're going to see Gaius is a really good guy. He's very gentle. He's very encouraging. He's a very stable guy. So as we go through this, it's been helping me this week. You can just think, especially since he's not here, you can think Gord Clausen, okay? Gaius is Gord Clausen. So he's writing to a key elder in the church to try and help him deal with this crisis situation, okay? So here's how he opens it. From the elder to my dear friend Gord, whom I love in the truth. Hope he doesn't watch this after. He's probably gonna. What he says to Gord, and what he says to Gaius is essentially this, okay? Keep doing the right things and keep supporting the missionaries I send you. Okay, so here's how he says it. Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. So what's he saying? This is kind of a standard opening to a letter in some ways, but he's saying, I know God is doing incredible work in your soul, no matter what happens to you on the outside. It is well with your soul. I pray that it's also going to be well with you on the outside. Pray blessings and health over you. And then he says, it gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. Just hearing about Gaius makes John overflow with joy. He has some people come to Ephesus, probably where he is, from this little town. Let's say it's Smyrna, maybe. And the people who comes, he says, how's the church going there? And they say, well, there's some bad stuff going on, but let me tell you, Gaius is doing an amazing job. He's so gentle. He's so loving. He builds relationships with people. He prays for people. He's showing up for people in their lives. He's had some real hard struggles that he's gone through, but he keeps on going the right way. It's phenomenal. He's like the core of that church, John. John is overflowing with joy at this reality. Wow, praise the Lord. And he tells Gaius so. So he's encouraging Gaius. Keep on walking in the truth, because I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. This very likely indicates that Gaius has been discipled by John, right? He is viewing Gaius not just as a Christian brother, but as his child, okay? That doesn't mean he's his child more than he is God's child. It just means that they have a deep relationship. John has discipled Gaius, maybe when Gaius was a young man. Okay? So he says, dear friend, you are faithful in what you're doing for the brothers and sisters, even though they are strangers to you. Now, I told you I would explain what's going on here. What's going on is that John has a mission team. Okay? So who are these brothers and sisters that Gaius is caring for who are strangers to him? Well, they are missionaries. They would have used the term apostles probably in those days, apostles with a lowercase a. These are exactly what we would call missionaries today. John is training mostly young men. He's training missionaries, and he has a team, and he's sending them different places. And back then, there's no hotels. You don't just book a hotel in Smyrna for your mission guy. He has to have somewhere to stay. So you're relying on people in the church to do what we would probably call billeting, right? They're going to take him into their home. They're going to feed him. And so Gaius is doing that. Whenever somebody comes from John to help the church do ministry in this little town, Gaius is saying, yes, come stay with me, right? Now, notice a number of things. You can tell certain things about people, not just by what they say, not even by the big things that they do, but by the little things, okay? Look around you in your life. Who do you know? Part of this letter is we're looking for examples. Who do you know in your life who, whenever there's someone who needs a place to stay, just says, absolutely, come to my house? That is a good sign. That is a sign that they are the kind of person you want to imitate, right? That is a sign that they are walking in the truth. It doesn't mean it all by itself, but it's a good sign, okay? Gaius is taking care of these strangers who've been sent by John. They've told the church about your love. So this is probably the people he's heard all this from. He sends his missionaries out. They come back. They tell him how Gaius was. Amazing. Please send them on their way in a manner that honors God. What he's telling Gaius here is make sure they are well supplied. Like give them some money. Give them some food when they leave. They don't have anything. It was for the sake of the name that they went out and they are receiving help. They're receiving no help from the pagans. So here he's saying these missionaries are relying only on the support of believers. They're not taking any money from anyone else. So they need your help. Okay, that's a little bit of an aside, but interesting. We ought therefore to show hospitality to such people that we may work together for the truth. Okay, so let's think about what he's said so far about Gaius. We'll get to this self-centered point and Diotrephes in a minute. But he said a lot of good things about Gaius, but notice what he has not told Gaius to do. Remember, this church is in crisis, right? And he is writing this letter to Gaius, this elder, to tell him what to do in this crisis. Now, you might expect John to say, walk into church, take charge of everything, tell him that you've got authority from the Apostle John, and kick Diotrephes out of the church. That would be maybe a common or normal human way to deal with a crisis like this. he doesn't tell Gaius to do anything like that. Nothing like that at all. You might be understandable if John told Gaius, go talk to the other elders. Make sure they are still on our side, right? Like form some teams here. Nothing like that in the letter at all. None of it. What he tells Gaius to do, the only things he tells him to do are keep doing all the good stuff you're doing. That's it. Just keep doing it. And then he basically says this, and this is, of course, my way of saying it, not John's. He's going to say it in a little bit different words. But he says, don't stress about Diotrephes. This guy's causing a major church crisis. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. He says Diotrephes is self-centered and he always wants to be first. But don't worry about it. Here's how John says it. I wrote to the church. When did he write to the church? In the letter of 2 John. You've already read the letter that he wrote to the church. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will not welcome us. So as I already have hinted at, what happened, I think, is he wrote this letter to the church. He said, look out for antichrists. Look out for people who are running off their own way. And Diotrephes read this letter and went, he's talking about me. He's telling people not to follow me. I'm done with this guy. This guy needs to get out. And so Diotrephes is fighting back against John. But he says Diotrephes loves to be first, and he will not welcome us. So here's another, as we're looking in our lives for examples to follow, examples to imitate. Here are some red flags. If someone is saying all the right things and it seems like they're doing lots of good things, but they clearly love to be first, that is a red flag. That is not someone to imitate. You might imitate some good things about them in their lives, but if they clearly love to be first, that's danger. That's danger zone. And if they don't welcome people, if their attitude is not welcoming consistently, then that's also a danger sign. Here's what else John says, how he says it. When I come, I will call attention to what he's doing. Okay? When I come, I will call it out. I will deal with it. So he doesn't shy away from this church crisis. He's going to enter into it. But he's careful about this. And he's not telling Gaius he has to do it immediately. And he's not going to do it in a controlling way, which is stunning, given that he is the Apostle John. If anybody could come in and say, what I say is right, you better do what I say, it's this guy. But that's not what he does. He says, when I come, I will call attention to what he's doing. He's not even John's not going to try and attack this head on. He says he's spreading malicious nonsense about us. But John knows that when he comes in person, his own character will speak for itself. The malicious nonsense is not going to hold up when he's there in person. Not satisfied with that, Diotrephes is even refusing to welcome other believers. He's refusing to welcome the missionaries. He also stops those who want to welcome missionaries and threatens to kick them out of the church. So Diotrephes is super controlling. Okay, that's another way you can tell. This is a red flag, super controlling. So, here's what he says next. Don't worry about Diotrephes. He's self-centered. He always wants to be first. Diotrephes is a bad example. So use his example. This is what John tells Gaius. Use it. Use his example to show people what not to do, how not to be. And then he says, here's the thing, Gaius, you and Demetrius, and we don't know anything about Demetrius other than what we're told here, but we can guess what Demetrius is like. You and Demetrius are good examples. So use Demetrius' example, right? Gaius can't use his own example. He can't go to people and say, be like me. But he can use another example, someone else in the church, okay? I'm tempted to throw out names. I'm not going to right now. Okay, use his example as a good example. Use his example to show people how to live. So the only way John tells Gaius to really respond to this crisis is just go talk to people and show them these two examples. Here's a good example of following Christ. Here's a bad example of following Christ. and encourage people to imitate the good example. That's it. That's the whole response to the crisis. Here's how he says it in his letter. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. I said that's the core of the whole letter. It is, because he set up this contrast. Good Christian, bad Christian. They're all believers. They all say they're Christians, but one is following the way of Jesus, one is not. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Now, it doesn't mean this next part, anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. It doesn't mean if you ever do anything evil, then you're not a Christian. Of course not. But it means, and John is he's so practical in this way. You can look around your life, and it's actually pretty easy. Okay? It's easy for you to look around your life and find people who are good examples of following Christ. It's also easy for you to look around your life and find people who are not good examples. That's not a hard thing for you to do. So when we're talking about walk in the truth and walk in love, what do those things mean? All you got to do is look around your life for examples. Look at what comes out of people's lives. And then just try to imitate the good examples. That's all you have to do. Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone, and even by the truth itself. This guy is actually doing the things the Bible says to do and that Jesus says to do. You can see it. He's humble. He's not seeking to be first. He's looking for the lowest places. He's serving other people willingly. He's hospitable. He obviously, genuinely cares for the people around him. Okay, John doesn't go into the details because Gaius already knows the details. We also speak well of him. We've met this guy. He's a good guy who's trying to follow Jesus. And you know our testimony is true, so teach people to imitate Demetrius. And then finally, the last thing he says in this letter is, don't worry, I am actually coming. I know I said I was coming in my last letter. Now the crisis is even worse, but I'm really coming. I'll come soon. You can tell from all of this just what is John going to be like when he shows up. He is going to do whatever hard work needs to be done, but the whole tone of it is John is still going to show up with love. We were noticing in Bible study this morning even how he's toned down his language now that he's naming people, right? When it was kind of vague in the previous letter, there are these people who are going to come who are antichrists, right? But now that he's named a person, Diotrephes is the one who's doing the wrong thing here. But he does not call Diotrephes an antichrist. Isn't that remarkable? He's toned down his language. You can see he still cares about Diotrephes. If Diotrephes will turn it around and stop being so self-centered, John will bring him back in. He's going to come to this church. He's going to deal with it, but he's going to deal with it in a very loving, non-controlling way. All of these are signs of the kinds of people you should be looking for to imitate. Okay? Not controlling. Don't try to manipulate people. They're loving. They're gentle. They're firm, but they're gentle. This is the Apostle John. Wow. This is how he says it at the end. I have a lot to write to you, but I don't want to do it with pen and ink. He's been forced to write another letter before he was able to go visit them. I have to write to you again. I just wish I could see you face to face. I hope to see you soon. We'll talk face to face. Peace to you. Why is he saying peace? Yeah, that's the normal ending to the letter. But also because Gaius is probably pretty stressed at this point, right? Major church crisis. Greet the friends there by name. Okay, so what we're going to do to wrap up, that's the end of the letter. What we're going to do to wrap up is just think about this good Christian, bad Christian idea. And I'm going to encourage you to actually, this maybe today or this week, think about some people that you can put in these categories in your life. Now, this is challenging, I know, because you don't want to call somebody a bad Christian. Okay? But I encourage you to do it anyway. I encourage you to think through your life and the people you've known. And it doesn't mean you're condemning this person. You're just thinking of, maybe it's only one part of their life in following Christ, but you're thinking of someone that you see that something in their life, even though they were a Christian, was not the way of Jesus. And you do not want to emulate that. You don't want to imitate them and be like that. And I also want you to think of maybe a number of examples of people you know who, wow, there was the love of God in action. There was a person who was really doing what Jesus says to do. I want you to think of those real people that you either know now or have known in the past. Because that's the main point of this letter. And a huge way that we can apply everything John has said. Okay? Demetrius and Diotrephes. Okay? And just for fun, I'll rename them because these are really hard names. Good thing I didn't have any of you guys come up and read these names, huh? Only this one, I even struggled with Diotrephes this week. Nathaniel Trepke had to help me figure out how to say it. So we'll just call them Derek and Dylan, mostly because there's no Derek and Dylan in our church. And those are common names, right? So here's what John is saying overall. You need to think of these people in your lives. Your Derek is somebody who is, or your Gaius is somebody who is a good example of following Jesus and of true, genuine Christian love. You need to think of who that is in your life. And you need to think of your Dylan, okay? You can pray for Dylan when you think of him, but he, in some way, is a bad example. Even he says he's a Christian, but maybe he's controlling or arrogant or manipulative or just trying to get more for himself in some way. That's not the way. But you need to think of who that is so that you can have these two clearly in front of you. And what John is saying is, then this is how you put into practice everything I've been saying in my letters. You try to not be like Dylan. Don't be like that toward other people. Do not imitate bad people. And you try to be like Derek, right? And that's what it means to imitate those who walk in light, in truth, and in love. That sounds like heavenly language, but the truth is, you know a number of people who are doing this right now. You need to think about how they live and try to be like them. And that's the end of John's letters. Let's pray. We'll continue in worship.